It is often said that peril does not always announce itself with a roar. At times, it comes softly, like a gentle murmur, a fleeting touch, fingers grazing in a moment of serendipity, a gaze that holds for just a heartbeat more than necessary, or a silence that swells to resonate within the chambers of your heart. It was never my intention for things to unfold this way. I seldom engage in such actions. Few rise with the desire to become ensnared in an experience that eludes definition, defies explanation, and remains irretrievable. Yet, not all tales commence with themes of betrayal or temptation. It all starts with a profound sense of solitude. A woman stands at her kitchen window, gazing out into the tempest, as rain cascades over the barn roof, draping it in a shimmering veil. As the wind rattles the shutters, memories press against the glass, reminiscent of ghosts lingering in the shadows. In that fleeting instant, precisely that singular moment, an undeniable shift occurs. At first, it goes unnoticed. Yet, a line starts to fade into ambiguity, not due to your crossing it, but rather because you overlooked its existence. For more than 10 years, I have called this farm my home. For 12 years, I have been married to a man who once had the power to make me laugh until tears streamed down my face. At present, our conversations have dwindled to almost nothing. He strides by me in the hallway as if I were merely a part of the decor. And yet, within those walls, another presence lingers. A person who truly perceives my essence. This tale is a challenging one to unfold. Yet, I believe certain truths must be spoken, regardless of the pain they may cause. Particularly in moments of pain, what transpired in my life, what nearly unfolded, transformed my entire understanding of love, of limits, and of my own identity. Should you ever find yourself at the precipice of a decision, uncertain of the path to take, I invite you to remain with me. Silence, I've come to understand, is not a phenomenon that emerges in an instant. It seeps in gradually, through neglected meals, unasked inquiries, and countless evenings spent feigning normalcy. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Susan. I am 43 years old. I reside on a tranquil expanse of land, roughly 40 minutes from the closest town. Vast stretches of untamed fields, weathered fences standing sentinel, a handful of horses grazing, and a restless wind that perpetually stirs the air. In this place, tranquility reigns supreme. Yet, tranquility often morphs into solitude when there is no one to partake in its embrace. For 12 years, my husband, Rick, and I have shared the journey of marriage. He once radiated warmth. Humorous, though a bit unrefined, he possessed an uncanny ability to make me feel as if I were the sole woman present. That was ages past, prior to the miscarriages, before sorrow erected a barrier that neither of us had the courage to scale. In recent times, our conversations revolve around feed schedules, utility bills, and the rotation of trips into town. Nothing further, nothing short of that. He retires for the night at an early hour, rises at dawn, and in that space between, we transformed into mere strangers cohabiting under the same roof. Next, we have Caleb, the offspring of Rick from his initial union. At the age of 11, he moved in with us permanently. In those days, he was diminutive for his years, slender, reserved, with eyes that appeared perpetually lost in thought. Initially, I found myself uncertain about my place in his life, yet I carved out a space. I paid attention. I was present for each match, every difficult moment, every bruised knee. As the days turned into weeks, a gentle warmth began to blossom between us. A rhythm emerged from our efforts, one I had never thought to question until now. At this moment, he has reached the age of 18. He stands above me, more resilient, still silent yet not in the same manner. He possesses a serene quality, calm resolve. At times, when his gaze meets mine, it's as if he's uncovering a part of me that had long been lost to memory. Perhaps that is precisely where the peril starts. It began as a mere whisper, small details. Caleb would always take note of my hair changes, whether it was a simple new part or a casually tucked strand. He would express his appreciation for dinner, not merely with a courteous thanks, but with heartfelt sincerity. "This tastes like something from a real kitchen," he remarked one day, and that sentiment lingered with me far longer than I would like to acknowledge. Rick remained oblivious to such details. He ceased to take notice quite some time ago. Initially, I convinced myself that it was merely a figment of my imagination. I found myself craving attention, perhaps overanalyzing the smallest of gestures. Yet, that didn't account for the way Caleb gazed at me on occasion, as if he were perceiving something delicate hidden behind my smile. Something I was unaware I was revealing. The baby was a subject we never broached. Not a single time since it occurred. Rick immersed himself in the barn, consumed by feed schedules and repairs. I immersed myself in a flurry of tasks, and between us, a silence blossomed, dense, unvoiced, and perpetually expanding. Yet Caleb, he never inquired outright. He never intruded. He merely observed. In those serene instances, when I believed I was solitary, folding laundry or rinsing vegetables, I would find his gaze upon me, not in a manner that caused me any discomfort, yet it was in a manner that truly acknowledged my presence, as if there were eyes lingering on my every move, as if there was still a flicker of concern. At times, I found myself lingering in silence as he entered the room, suspending my breath, aligning my stance, curious about what he perceived when his gaze met mine now, not as a child regarding a stepmother, but as a young man beholding a woman, and that filled me with dread. Not due to his influence, yet it is due to my influence. The sun hung low in the sky when Caleb stumbled and fell. He had been laboring in the rear pasture, endeavoring to soothe one of the younger horses that had been startled during the tempest. The gate's abrupt clang echoed in the air, accompanied by his terse, muffled curse, long before his figure came into view. As he stepped through the threshold of the house, his hoodie bore the marks of the outside world, streaked with dirt, and a subtle limp accompanied his movements, his hand resting against his shoulder. "The horse became a bit unruly," he murmured, wiping the mud from his jeans. "Did you make contact with the earth?" I inquired, my steps carrying me closer to him. "Indeed, somewhat challenging," he confessed, grimacing as he shifted his shoulder. That evening, the rain returned with a vengeance. The rain pounded on the windows like relentless fists, while the wind wailed through the trees in the backyard. Earlier, Rick had ventured into town to gather supplies. He still had not returned, most likely biding time until the tempest passes. Caleb sat in the kitchen, his posture slightly bent as he pressed a warm pack against his back. His visage was drawn, etched with the weight of suffering. "Allow me to assist," I offered. He raised his gaze. "Is it with the heat pad?" For a moment I paused. "No, with your back. I once lent a hand to your father during his moments of trouble. I can offer you a brief massage. Perhaps it could be made a bit more flexible." He blinked slowly, as if awakening from a dream. "Is that so?" I nodded, my hand reaching for the bottle of lotion tucked away in the drawer. "Only if it brings you ease." He paused before responding. Yet, in a hushed tone, he remarked, "Yeah, I would appreciate that." He drew his hoodie over his head and sank onto the couch, lying face down, his shirt raised slightly to expose the aching muscles that spanned his upper back. The sole illumination emanated from the stove lamp, accompanied by the gentle flicker of the tempest beyond the window. I settled next to him, my hands quivering more than I wished they would. The initial contact was unadorned, expert, known. Yet there was something in the stillness, the silence, the rain drumming against the roof like a steady metronome. A subtle change occurred. The lotion began with a refreshing chill, yet soon succumbed to the warmth of my touch. I advanced with deliberate slowness, navigating the tautness in his shoulders, mindful to avoid applying excessive pressure. Caleb remained motionless, his breath steady, his form at ease under my caress. For a fleeting instant, a sense of safety enveloped me. Uncomplicated, a simple yet profound gesture of kindness. The rain outside eased, transforming into a gentle, persistent cadence upon the glass panes. The tempest had subsided, yet within me, a new chapter was unfolding. I glided my thumbs along the gentle arc of his upper back, resting just beneath the shoulder blades. And then, I listened as he spoke. His voice was so soft that I initially questioned whether I had truly heard him. "You are the sole person who brings me a sense of being cherished." My hands became icy, immobilized by the chill that enveloped me. Silence enveloped the room. Even the rain, in its own way, seemed to whisper. I remained silent. I was unable to. The words lingered in the space between us, both weighty and fragile, akin to glass dangling from a slender thread. He remained still. He chose not to retract it. He simply remained there, still and silent. In that moment, a rush of sensations enveloped me, overwhelming and all-consuming. A constriction in my chest. A warmth lingers behind my eyes. Regret, thankfulness. A deep yearning fills the air. Apprehension, uncertainty enveloped my emotions. I found myself uncertain of the emotions I was permitted to experience. Yet, I found it impossible to overlook the profound impact those words had on me. For it had been years, since anyone gazed upon me and perceived something beyond a mere role. A devoted partner, a guardian of well-being, a woman who ensured the pantry brimmed with provisions and the bills were settled on time. Yet Caleb, he had witnessed me, and those 6 hushed words, they unearthed a part of me I hadn't realized was still breathing. Following that night, a transformation stirred within me. I awoke the following morning without any intention of change. Yet I was merely a touch. I dedicated a bit more time to the art of grooming my hair. I applied the fragrance that had lain dormant for years, the very scent I once adorned myself with before Rick ceased to take notice. I retrieved the delicate blue blouse I had hidden at the rear of my closet. It was not intended for Caleb. That was the narrative I crafted for my own solace. It was meant for me. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, I yearned to experience the sensation of being truly alive. And Caleb, he was aware. He remained silent. Yet, I sensed it in the way his gaze held just a moment more than necessary. As he smiled upon my entrance into the room, he began to lend a hand around the house unprompted, carrying in firewood, tending to the horses and sweeping the porch. And after dinner, rather than retreating to his room, he would linger. He would inquire about the events of my day. He lingered at the kitchen table, his fingers drawing circles on his mug, as if he wished to suspend the night in a delicate stasis. It was pure and untainted, yet it was far from straightforward. There were fleeting instances, tiny ones, that took me by surprise. It was a fleeting moment, our hands grazing against each other as we exchanged dishes. Or when I'd glance upward and discover his gaze fixed upon me. In those fleeting moments, a sensation gripped my chest, tightening its hold. Not because I desired it to progress any further, yet due to my fear that it could. The silence enveloped me, stirring a sense of dread within, yet simultaneously igniting a deep yearning for its embrace. I found myself attuned to the sound of his footsteps approaching. The screen door let out a familiar creak as he stepped inside. For the resonance of his voice uttering, "Need assistance with that?" and I despised the anticipation that swelled within me. We had not transgressed any boundaries, yet we found ourselves positioned in such proximity to one. The tempest descended swiftly that evening. Dense clouds, fierce gusts, and thunder that shook the windows as if issuing a dire alert. As I completed the task of washing the final dish, a sudden sound pierced the air. The barn gate had slammed shut. Caleb, he entered through the rear entrance, drenched to the core. His hair dripped with water, the hoodie adhering to him as if it were a second skin. He remained silent, merely standing there, his chest rising and falling, gaze directed toward the ground. "You ought to have waited," I remarked, reaching for a towel hanging on the hook. "I couldn't abandon her in that place," he said, his gaze fixed on Belle, the youngest mare. Fear gripped her. I inched nearer, delicately placing the towel against his forehead, sweeping aside the damp strands that clung to his face. My fingers brushed against his cheekbone, radiant amidst the cold. I hesitated for a moment, then swiftly retracted my hand. "Go change before you get sick," I murmured, my voice barely rising above a whisper. With a subtle nod, he vanished into the depths of the hallway. I lingered in the kitchen, attempting to soothe the relentless thrum of my heartbeat. The counter was wiped clean, The salt and pepper shakers have been artfully rearranged. Anything to occupy my hands. My thoughts resonate more powerfully than the tempest raging beyond the window. In that moment, I became acutely aware of it. Embracing me from behind, arms encircle my form. Steadfast yet gentle. Soft and soothing. Undoubtedly, Caleb, his forehead gently nestled between my shoulder blades. Not a single word escaped his lips. I did not either. I remained motionless, caught in a moment of stillness. Not due to fear, but because a part of me was coming undone. Gradually, silently, and then, tears streamed down my face, neither loud nor broken, only gentle tears that flowed unbidden. I sensed his breath escape behind me, tremulous, subdued. He too was shedding tears. Silence enveloped us. We remained still. We simply remained in place, enveloped in a stillness that conveyed depths beyond the reach of language. Following that night, a palpable shift lingered in the air. It remained unspoken between us. Not the tempest, not the stillness, not the way his arms had encircled me as if I were something truly precious to keep close. Yet it remained. Caleb continued to lend a hand around the house, gathering firewood and tending to the horses with unwavering dedication. Yet, his presence seemed to carry a weightier significance now. He navigated with greater caution in my presence, observed me with greater intensity, as if he lingered in anticipation, perhaps for a response, perhaps for a nod of approval. And what about me? I endeavored to feign that all remained as it once was. I occupied my hands with various tasks. My words illuminate. My demeanor remains courteous yet distant. Yet, the memory lingered, his warmth enveloping me, the tremor of his breath brushing against my back, and the silent communion of our tears. It lingered in the stillness of my thoughts. As I found myself solitary in the kitchen at the break of dawn, I gazed into the kettle, confronting my own reflection. As I folded his laundry, I found myself pausing over a shirt, my fingers lingering longer than necessary. As his footsteps echoed in the distance, my heart leapt, unbidden and without consent. I began to steer clear of making eye contact, maintained brevity in discussions, exited the room with a slight urgency as he entered. Yet Caleb, he never compelled. He never inquired. He merely cast his gaze in my direction, embracing that same gentle touch. The familiar, subtle pain lingers on, and in some inexplicable way, that stung deeper than any words he could have uttered. For I was certain he recalled as well. It was clear to me that he sensed it as well. We found ourselves engaged in a charade, both of us failing miserably at the act. Two souls twirling in the embrace of a moment that neither could escape from their hearts. I once believed I embodied strength as a woman, the sort who held everything in place, who discerned the path of virtue and embraced it, even in the absence of an audience. The type who remained steadfast. No one welcomed frailty. She never required anyone's gaze, for she was complete within herself. Yet that was a time gone by, before the silence lingered excessively, before the days merged seamlessly, akin to soft, muted watercolors, before I understood that occasionally, a mere glance is enough to evoke the sensation of truly being noticed, to be desired. In an instant, the boundaries of right and wrong begin to fade, not due to a lack of understanding, but because, in that fleeting moment, the urgency of desire drowns out the voice of reason. I hold no resentment towards Caleb. He merely accompanied me on a path I was already traversing. He uttered no words of malice. He sought nothing beyond what my silence had already laid bare. I hold no blame towards Rick, either. He is not without his merits. Simply weary, wounded, grieving in a manner that allowed no space for my own existence. Yet, in the midst of his absence, I discovered a lesson that no act of betrayal could ever impart. Indifference can shatter a heart with a depth akin to betrayal, yet it does so in silence. Take your time, without staining the ground with crimson. I often ponder the question, what role do I play in this narrative? Is it the wife, the woman who lingered perilously near the brink? Or perhaps, just an individual? Once a soul content in solitude, she now yearned for the gaze of another, an ache blossoming within her to be truly acknowledged. The afternoon unfolded in serene silence. The kind where the breeze whispered gently, the horses stood serene, and the home embraced a tranquility that felt nearly divine. In the kitchen, as I dried the dishes, my gaze fell upon it. Neatly folded, it lay on the weathered surface of the table, a solitary sheet of notebook paper. There is no envelope. Unnamed. Only 6 words penned in Caleb's distinctive script. I apologize if I overstepped, yet I truly meant each and every word. I gazed at it for what felt like an eternity. With my hands still moist from the dish towel, I found my breath coming in shallow gasps. My gaze followed every letter, every deliberate curve of ink, as if they held the key to understanding how we arrived at this moment. I held back my tears. I remained silent. With deliberate care, I folded it once more, slowly, neatly, and made my way to the weathered drawer tucked beneath the counter. The moment I held onto the items that seemed to fade into the background. Frayed dishcloths, a weathered tin filled with buttons, and the worn rags we employed to dry the horses after an arduous ride. I tucked the note discreetly between the towels. He pressed it down. The drawer was closed and remained there, rooted in place, not sorrowful, not upset, simply empty. As twilight descended, I found myself by the window, watching the sky shift from a warm amber to a somber gray. The pasture lay in serene stillness. Caleb retreated to his room. My husband, as ever, seemed to inhabit a realm apart. Even in the confines of our home, I found myself repeatedly pondering the same question. Again and again, did I just manage to sidestep a blunder, or did I release the sole thing that ever breathed life back into my existence? Maybe you've never stood this close to a line. Maybe you have, or maybe you're standing there right now wondering if anyone would notice if you disappeared. If this story touched something in you, some quiet ache, some memory, some echo, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own home? Have you ever been seen by someone who wasn't supposed to? Leave a comment. I read every one. And if you find value in stories like these, honest, complicated, human, please consider subscribing. Not because I have all the answers, but because maybe, like me, you just want to feel less alone. Until next time, take care of your heart, and thank you for listening.